Libido Dominandi was a beautiful book. Many of us here spent a great deal of time reading it. I remember in the beginning you introduced the idea of control by the passions by means of talking about Augustine. Would you be able to briefly introduce the idea of oneself being controlled by one's passions so that everybody here can understand?
Yeah, the mechanism was described pretty much by St. Augustine in the City of God. He said, a man has as many masters as he has vices.
In the City of God, you said?
Yeah, his big book about to defend the church against the charge that they were responsible for the fall of Rome. A man has as many masters as he has vices. The church had talked about the slavery of sin. It's in the Gospels. It's in that, but he codified it in a way. He did it in a philosophical way that pretty much stated the position fairly clearly. This was a revolution in consciousness because the ancient Greeks didn't have a lot to say about freedom. They really didn't talk about it a lot. They felt that people were slaves, fusei, which is to say by nature. There were certain people who were condemned to be slaves.
Let's reset a second. Professor, you roboted out for a moment. Can you start from where your last thought? Can we begin again?
I said that St. Augustine, by placing freedom in the realm of morality as a function of morality, created revolution in philosophical thinking, because the Greeks, Plato and Aristotle, felt that freedom was basically a function of your state in life, and you were a slave by nature. It didn't make much sense. I mean, you could be captured as sailing across the Mediterranean and turned into a galley slave, even if you're a prince. So it didn't make much sense, but they couldn't really think it through. But Augustine was the guy who thought it through, and then you had 1,000 years of meditation on Augustine. He was the main thinker that Christian Europe thought about, and you had a whole sacramental system based on it, to the point of, by the time we get to the 18th century, the Jesuits had created a system of examination of conscience. Adam Weishaupt taught at a Jesuit university. It was the University of Ingolstadt in Bavaria. He basically took the understanding of Jesuit examination of conscience and turned it upside down, which is to say, originally you go to your spiritual advisor or your confessor and you say, these are my sins. And he says, okay, go and sin no more. The Illuminati, and this is the name of the organization Weishaupt founded, turned it upside down. So instead of saying go and sin no more, they say, well, we will give you a license for sin as long as you tell us what your sins are. At this point, Weishaupt called it Seelenanalyse. And if you translate that into Greek, it means psychoanalysis. And that's the term that Sigmund Freud used. And I am convinced that Sigmund Freud read the Illuminati manuscripts via Barruel, because Barruel's book, The History of Jacobinism, Memoirs Toward the History of Jacobinism, was a underground bestseller throughout the 19th century. Byron and Shelley read it on their famous picnic in Switzerland. Everybody read this book. And as a result, the ideas that were the basis for Christian spirituality got turned on their head, and what was the instrument for liberation from the slavery of sin, namely confession, got turned upside down to a form of control based on the promotion of the vice that you were supposed to confess. And the best examples of these were, as I mentioned before, Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, who had a contest, a sort of competition to see who could get the most rich Americans on the couch, on the psychiatrist's couch, to extort money from them. That's where it ended up. That was the basis of it. That was the mechanism, and that's how it became a form of political control.